Welcome to another one. I'm Rob. Make sure you subscribe. This is Brendan, wherever I don't know where you would be like on the regular camera, but
I'm
from
right here.
Ample Thought. Oh, I didn't
Right.
see your shirt. What's your shirt? Is that Stewart and Colbert?
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. I
Yeah.
have John Stewart's book about America in my basement. My brother had it. I think it was a gift from my mom.
I
That
have
book
that in
must be,
storage somewhere.
that's got to be what, 20 years old now? That is an old book.
Yeah.
It's funny to go back and read through that one. Speaking of funny or unfunny, did you know who Matt Rife was?
No,
Okay.
I had no idea.
If you don't know who Matt Rife, I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, could be Riff. Oh, that'd be a
Or
cool last name.
Rife.
R-
Rife.
Rifai,
No.
Rife, Matt
Rife.
Rife. Well, then that means you're over 20 years old. I would assume his audience is 20 and younger. This is the age of TikTok comedy. Essentially, that's what this is. A long time ago, there used to be this thing called Vine, which died. I don't know if it was bought out and just disappeared or if it
Yeah,
just
I
died
don't know.
on its own. It was essentially short form videos, and a lot of comedians, in fact, some here on YouTube, like Danny Gonzalez, who is hilarious, by the way. His videos are just good. He does not do stand up, but there is a whole generation of Vine comedians. This is like the new stand up. They don't have to leave their house. And I guess during the pandemic, it was a good thing.
Yeah.
Judah Friedlander
Oh
does
yeah.
a live stand-up show almost weekly. That's pay what you want. You got to get a ticket, but it's pay what you want, and it's online. And he does like
Yeah.
crowd work through Zoom. It's
Yeah.
hilarious.
Yeah. I've
Um,
seen a
so
few comedians do that. I think Melissa Villasenor from SNL was definitely doing that during the pandemic. I think she was
Zoom
giving a
comedy,
lot away for free. Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
really? Oh my
Yeah.
God, I didn't know that. She's great.
Yeah. She's good.
Who else have you seen do that? I thought it was only Judah.
No, you mean for the pay? I don't know about everybody for the pay, but I mean Norm was doing it. That's another person. Um, I think David Spade was also a lot of SNL people, to be honest. Dana Carvey was doing it. Um, I could just go down the whole cast.
Well,
Um,
Spade wasn't Spade doing like a show from his basement during the pandemic?
yeah, it was his
Yeah.
basement. Yeah,
Um, That oh man, now I'm gonna have to do some digging later tonight. So if you like those comics, they're doing online stuff. But Matt Rife is the newer generation. So if you're over 20, just you don't. It's okay that you don't know him. I'm gonna play a bit of his comedy, if that's what we're calling it. That is severely under fire, and we're gonna talk about it. Here is Matt Rife's uh what was his stand-up special? Natural Selection, correct? In case this is such a huge sell, you got to go see it for yourself.
I've only been to Baltimore one time. I ate lunch there, and the hostess who like seats you at the restaurant had a black eye. A full black eye. It wasn't like what happened. It was pretty obvious what happened. And we couldn't get over the fact that we're like, this is the face of the company. Like this is who you have greeting people. And my boy who I was with was like, yeah, I feel bad for her, man. I feel like they should put her in the kitchen or something where nobody has to see her face, you know? And I was like, yeah, but I feel like if she could cook, she wouldn't have that black eye.
So, a tale as old as time, I think that joke's been around for a millennium,
I mean at least 60 years.
at least. I mean, that is an old joke rebranded with
Nope,
a
not even
person.
rebranded. Not told in a new way. It's just a new face. That's it.
Okay, then it's told with a new city involved because
Sure.
he incorporates Baltimore in it.
Yes.
Um, and then I think the story was from
The
today,
Independent.
The Independent. Olivia Petter. That's got to be how you pronounce it because it's not Peter because it's
I believe it's Petter.
P-E-T-T.
Yeah.
Yeah, Olivia Petter. Which, if you look up her pedigree, you'll see she's an award-winning journalist, it says, and I think this is on her own website. She works for like Vogue. I think she's just like subcontracted out to a bunch of places, but she's from the UK, and she made the Forbes 30 under 30 list. I was trying to really dig into like her personal life, not in like a bad way, but in like everything I was reading, I was like, oh, this broad's got really rich parents, because you don't get these accolades. The
Let's
30
not
under.
say broad while we're talking about what is clearly a misogynistic delivery from a young man.
Listen, you don't have to say broad. I'm saying it, because
Ah,
this broad is a broad. And I have many critiques and many issues with what she's doing. But I also feel like her article criticizing Matt Rife and trying to defend feminism uh, with her reach, because she has a huge reach. She has a podcast, Millennial Love, which I listened to today.
okay.
She is advocate, activist in the realm of that for violence against women. She really has her hands in multiple different things. She is, I don't know if you can be certified with this, but she is a dating coach.
Okay.
Not a real thing. Um, and this whole article is essentially saying, like, this misogyny, this comedy should be stamped out. We got to stand up to it. We got to fight this battle. This is, the leading cause of what's wrong with society today. All being shouted from the rooftops by this. I don't know. I'm gonna guess she's like 28 or something. She can't be in her early 20s. She's got it. I couldn't find her age. Google it. I can't find it. But from a young
So,
feminist.
okay. So, I don't want to say the obvious, but I'll say the obvious, which is I assumed we were talking about Matt Rife. What is comedy? What's allowed in comedy? What's not okay? The mouthpiece, the delivery, the overarching theme with his stuff, and you went straight to attacking the woman, attacking the woman who wrote an article, which we can totally, break
Well,
down.
well, well. Listen, I was just kind of giving the synopsis of
Okay,
the background, because I don't feel like many people know Matt Rife. I know he's on the rise. I know he exploded on TikTok. He parlayed that into like a true stand-up comedy um arena tour. I mean, this dude's touring big venues. He's pulling in crowds. Um but again, I think if you said this in day-to-day conversation with people at your work, friends, family, and you said, "Oh, did you see Matt Rife's new Netflix?" People are going to be like, "Who?" You'd be like,
yeah.
the funny kid from TikTok." Same with this Olivia. I mean, it's like a battle of a generation nobody knows about yet. These are very new kids breaking onto the scene. So
Well,
I just wanted.
we don't know about him, but there are many people on TikTok who are
Oh yeah.
super famous with kids from 13 to let's say 20 or 25, whatever you want to say. Because we're not in the know doesn't mean that they're not huge. But you're right. I had no idea who this kid was. I read the article that Miss Petter wrote, and I could break that down, but I would much rather first break down his comedy special, Natural Selection.
And just so we're clear, she is not leading the charge on this. In fact, oh, I should have found the YouTube. There was a YouTuber, a bigger YouTuber, who broke down Matt Rife, his comedy, and essentially what we're going to talk about, but the laziness of his comedy, and really even compared him, which I thought was brilliant, to Dane Cook. Now, if you don't remember, Dane Cook broke onto the scene when MySpace was like just
Nothing.
being, well, not even nothing, but like people hadn't figured out
Right.
how to capitalize. You know what I mean? It was like this cool new virtual world of like connecting and bands and top five
Yeah.
friends. but nobody had really, been like, oh, this is how you can utilize this is like a tool. And Dane did it. And that's the one thing I will give that guy credit for. The way he hustled online. I even remember like friending him or him friending, whatever,
The
however it went down.
the Sufi or whatever
Sufi.
Sufi, Superfinger.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember that as well. Now, the clear distinction, I think, is that this guy was, and again, I don't know everything about this guy, Matt Rife, but it is my understanding he got big from little clips on TikTok primarily, some other stuff on YouTube, but primarily on TikTok, which is, it could be 3 seconds that people are seeing him, but he is I think, objectively attractive young man, high cheekbones, which he talks about in his special, and he did not have what Dane Cook had, which was about 7 to 8 years of actually doing the comedy circuits from LA to New York and back and all over the country. Dane Cook primarily in LA, off of the Strip. He busted Dane Cook busted his butt, like you said, getting his name out there and utilizing that tool of MySpace and as much media as he could get his hands on. This kid clearly does not know stand up. I mean, I don't know if this is his first attempt or within the first year, but it is clear that he is not
Well, I
polished,
believe.
but for
Well,
his eyebrows.
yeah, and probably his nails. But I believe this is his first special, like Netflix
I couldn't find
natural.
anything else on him
Yeah,
as far as
this
a
is,
special.
and that's why, like, it's kind of weird that the way he exploded, he must have done. You got to give him a little credit because for him to parlay things, and I've watched other not TikTokers but YouTubers who their channel got big and they tour as a stand-up comedian, but they're I really I don't want to call them not true comedians because I don't want, like, that's where I would feel bad because they're comedy, they're comedians in their
Okay.
own right. It's a different, again, the generations of comics are just changing right now. Just like I was really blown away going back through Danny Gonzalez's resume when I discovered him a few years ago, and then finding all Vine videos on YouTube of him and going, oh wow, I see the progression, and instead of, like you said, Dane Cook doing the stand-up circuit and grabbing open mics, these kids are figuring it out virtually. It's such a weird way to work it out, especially because without that crowd, without falling flat, not getting no likes, no retweets, stuff that you can delete, stuff that there's a comment section, but there's no interaction, true
Right.
interaction.
Yeah.
It's really, like you said, it defines you as a comic in a totally different way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
this
I want
dude's
I was going to
well,
say I want to get into more of what he said during this special.
that's what I was just
Um
gonna say. This
and
dude's been under fire for this misogyny thing, and that's why I was bringing up the YouTuber who was comparing him to Dane Cook, because I feel like for a few months now, this has kind of been the hubbub. Like, this guy's kind of exploding, but people are really seeing through him, or at least outside of his fan base, older folks, the younger millennials, not the Zoomers. They, I think, have totally bought it hook, line, and sinker. Think this is, God's gift.
seemingly.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, go ahead and talk about this special. Natural. I keep wanting to call it unnatural selection. I don't know why. Natural
Well,
selection.
it's very clear that the majority of his audience, one, is female. He first comes out on stage, and it is a roar, a cacophonous roar of
Women.
female voices, yeah, of yelling, and I mean, it might be 2 minutes of him, them applauding him and just screaming and saying, anyway. So he starts off with that joke. I mean, within the first 45 seconds of the special, And he
Wait,
ends
that joke I just played?
yeah.
That's his opener?
And the reason is because he said, I wanted to see how cool you guys are. I figured if I did a joke about domestic violence, like the rest will go swimming. And I wanted to see how cool you guys are, though. And that is something comedians do when you are at a level like I hate to always go back to Jesselnick, but he's a master at this specific thing. Or Jimmy Carr being another one, saying, let's start high and see if I cross the line. And if I do, maybe I bring it down a little bit. But they've already established that they are being gross and being ridiculous for the sake of being ridiculous. Whether you're a
Well,
heel,
they live on the other side of the line. They're not towing it. They're not walking it. They're not, um, pushing the envelope. Like they've busted out. Where they live. The line is here, and they're way over it. And that's there's no coming back.
but they worked for it. I mean,
Oh
like
yeah,
we were saying with Dane Cook, and it doesn't matter if you're Sarah Silverman or Maria Bamford, one of my favorites, Maria Bamford or Brian Posehn, Jay Moore, Dennis Leary, even. I mean, we can go super old, but there is a level that you go to and you get good at it and you stay in that place. This kid came up from the bottom or seemingly came up from the bottom and just went straight for it in his very first special, seeing where it lands. Now, many people said that Michael Richards, Kramer from Seinfeld, was just seeing where it lands in the Laugh Factory, whatever that was, 15 years ago when he decided to go crazy using the N word in a balcony of gentlemen who were giving him crap, heckling him, whatever. That is not, if Kramer can't get away with it after 30 years on television and doing stand up routines, I don't know where this kid thought he was coming in making, like you said, just bare bottom, easy, old, and not even easy joke. He didn't retell it in any different way other than saying maybe the location, but
yeah, Baltimore.
it was clear that he was getting energy back from the crowd, that it was more than okay to do that. And he follows it up with more jokes about women basically being dumb, women putting too much into crystals is the next thing that he talks about. Um, Basically, that they're basic. Women are basic, and they should know better. And I would say a lot of pandering was going on with ladies. You should be better at this. You're better than crystals. You're better than. I mean, I could go into more about how unfunny it was. I watched it for 30 minutes out of the 55 minutes, I think it was, and I had to shut it off. Uh, I told you in before this that he had some good joke construction when it was clear it was just his, but those fell by the wayside. The ones that really got the crowd going were the misogynistic jokes, the homophobic jokes, the he has a whole thing about God. God does, great things, and he balances things out, and it feels like what I have viewed as a Christian comic trying to wedge in some apologetics or religion in a joke that it doesn't fit. So not only does it not fit, he is not polished, he is not tenured in any way, but um, it is clear that if any other person, I'm talking professionals, said these same jokes, people would be like, what the hell is this? He is I think, again, objectively attractive young man, and that's kind of it. I mean, you were talking about Dane. Dane was a very good looking young guy, but he had animation, he had
He had
emotion,
presence. He had
he
a
had
presence
stage presence, he
which
had
you can only
showmanship.
get from being on stage.
Right.
TikTok is not going to give you stage. You know what I mean? It's TikTok, filming yourself. You'll never get that feel of how to work a crowd in that space. And Dane, again, I know he gets critiqued. I liked him, especially because he reminded me of my friend Brandman. I almost felt like, people accuse Dane of lifting some material loosely, lightly.
Yeah, not as
I,
bad as others, but yes, he certainly did.
I always, when Dane started exploding, I was like, oh, he's stealing my friend Brandman's like character, like
Mm.
persona. Again, Dane from Massachusetts, we never met him. He obviously didn't steal it, but his whole like language, drawn out word, bringing his breath back and forth, and the way he would move, it was like it was a friend I grew up with, so I kind of was biased to just liking that about him.
So
But
I want to point out I am not in a jealous place about this kid, but the arrogance that this kid has on stage of look at who I am without the persona that you're talking about. He is not registering as anything but a young kid, and I don't know if
no,
it
good looking.
matters.
Don't even call him a young
Good,
kid. Just say a good looking person.
a good looking guy, a good looking guy, period. So
But
I don't
that's it.
know if that matters to the younger generation. Man, now I really sound old, but I don't know if that matters to the younger generation. It certainly doesn't hurt. I mean, there are many unattractive, great comedians, but you don't see the ones that are like kind of iffy, who do really well really quickly. You don't see that. Shane Gillis, I believe, has been doing stand up for about 15, I mean, close to 15 years, if not 15 years. That's twice as long as anyone would need to figure out who they are, what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, and all that. I watched a lot of Shane Gillis's stuff to see what I can pick out of there as either is this guy on the right, is this guy on the left. I think he is skating by very carefully. He appeals to a broader base now because he kind of left Trump stuff away, even though he brings stuff back every now and then. And he's finding the hegemony with, you know what, I'm milk toast. I'm going to be a little bold about this thing, but it's not going to be super offensive. And if it does, if it's a well constructed joke, as we have talked about many times, people kind of know what they're getting with this guy Shane. I don't think anybody who is old enough to have the experience of good stand up over the course of decades. I mean, from you could say from Lenny Bruce to Richard Pryor to Colin Quinn. I mean, throw Bill Cosby in there if you want to, George Carlin. We can go on and on and on to today. I don't think anybody's watching this kid saying, you know what? He's going to be big. He's going to
He's
be
got
big
that
because
magic.
he's got that magic. He's just got it really dialed. I don't think anyone's saying that. I think he
Well, and the
is.
thing is you got to remember he's already big. That's the weirdest part about this. He's
No, I know.
already big, so you can't even say like he's going to be big. It's like he already got there, and he didn't even have that period of like, hey, this kid's special. Watch him work. You know what I mean? Like there was no circuit
Now,
and
all of that
whispers.
being said, I couldn't do what he is doing. I don't have his
So,
humor. I don't think.
well,
Um,
listen, the structure to his jokes are very, very. You can feel it coming. There's an
Absolutely.
like you almost know the joke before as soon as he starts to trot down that path. It's very much like a syncopated beat. It's just like da 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 da. But
Yeah.
if you or I, let's I don't want to say character. Let's think of someone who's not George Clooney. The opposite end.
Okay.
If not Ron Jeremy, but just
Ron Howard's brother.
okay, yeah. But think of
I
him
can't
young.
remember his name ever.
I,
Ron
I
Howard's brother.
someone around those physical aspects, and they
Okay.
were his age and went on stage and told that joke. You think he'd have a Netflix special?
I don't know. I mean, again, we're talking about a kid who got clearly famous through TikTok, which is a young person's tool. So if you take that, I don't know how many followers he has. Let's say he has 50 million followers. Who cares? The
Yeah.
point is that Netflix said, you got enough to where not only are
That's
you
going
going
to
to
make
fill
us
in
money.
that's going to make us tons of money. We're going to pay you 100,000 if he's lucky, 100,000 to do the special, and that'll beget more specials and all of that. But if anything has been shown to be clear in the past 10 years, it's you can lose big on a Netflix special, and they'll have another one waiting for you. Period.
I already have one filmed for you. But
Right.
my point is with those hypothetical 50 million followers, if he didn't look like he looked, he wouldn't have that following. Like you said, the audience, and this was another critique I heard, you're not the first person, is mostly women. It's almost like they like him because he's a very good looking bad boy. Like he talks down to girls, but we kind of like that. You know, it's a whole niche, almost a cult of personality. It's very specific to like what he's doing and the women who are following him. But if he didn't have these looks and you just had somebody else saying this material, I almost want to test this out. I want to get somebody who's a little overweight, you know, not a good beard, balding, really hairy shoulders, doing it in a wife beater and, you know, like cargo shorts and Crocs, and have him tell all the jokes, same cadence, everything. It's easy to replicate what he's doing and see if that would even get any views.
But you're
The
missing the
material,
recipe you're missing the recipe I've already given you. This, you don't see somebody who is generally unattractive, generally older, let's just say. You don't see those people do this stuff because they don't make it. You see
exactly.
very attractive people get away with some things. I mean, this is just bitching at this point about damn these,
Well,
pretty people or whatever.
it's not. What it is, and this is what I was this is the crescendo on that statement. The material cannot stand alone. His material just
Agreed.
is not anything that if you read.
I hear him like
What?
throwing up or something.
Throwing up?
Yeah, he's just like.
Okay,
Oh.
okay. Hold on one second. My kids have been sick for like months. Just hold on one second.
Yeah, he's
He's-
crying. I got him a bowl.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I'll just yeah. So anyway, this Netflix special, watch it if you want. I defy you to laugh in the first 20 minutes. There of everything that I saw, there was one throwaway line that was good. He could have made an entire this kid Rife could have made an entire bit about that. And he threw it away because his crowd is not interested in those kind of deeper, I don't want to say intellectual styles of, and maybe that's not his style. So we're going to get back talking about the reporter who, if you can, I suggest reading the Independent article about not only the Matt Rife special, but her take on a lot of male comedians, usually white male comedians, who have not just a misogynistic view about women or their jokes are misogynistic, but kind of a violent perspective on how to treat women. Not that the differences between men and women or jokes about men and women haven't been told for a long time, but again, there are people who can get away with certain jokes about women. Bill Burr being one of our favorites, only because he established himself in Boston. How many years ago now? 30 years ago.
At least, maybe more.
With a certain glint and tongue-in-cheek attitude, to a large extent, with Bill Burr.
But remember, also, that was like the differences between men and women was like a whole era of comedy.
It's always going to be. It's still an era. It will always be. It will always be. And just to wrap up the Bill Burr thing, I say it's tongue in cheek because you take Anthony Jeselnik, you take Bill Burr, you take Jimmy Carr, you take a lot of these more offensive comedians, and you don't hear sometimes. I was going to say Russell Brand, but he didn't really say a whole lot about beating women or jokes about sexual assault. This is what this woman points out in the article: is that some of these comedians have been accused of sexual assault. Chris D'Elia, is that how you say his name?
Uh,
D'Elia.
yeah,
Anyway,
I forget because one of my friends or one of the guys I hired loved him, and I always thought he had a weird vibe about him. And then, like you are saying, he had a lot of accusations. It kind of killed his career,
yeah. So I mean, and I could
rightfully
wrap.
so too.
Of course, of course. So again, there are things you can get away with. And there are things that you put into comedy that you are doing with a wink and a nod to the audience. As Daniel Tosh would say, if he says a joke that's racist, a racist sounding joke, or a dark humor joke, not like that, a racist joke, he will say, that is how you're supposed to respond to that. You hear a couple of yee-haws and the trouble's a brewing. The comics who know what they're doing to a certain extent and have crafted these jokes in a certain way that everybody understands it's a joke. There's a little too much nuance, let's call it, with this kid's stand-up special where you're like, you don't ever want to think, is this guy serious? Does he actually believe that? Happens more than a few times in this special. In the same way that it affected Dave Chappelle when he had things that he was saying that seemed a little too close to, I think he really believes this, one way or the other. So I'll wrap it up just by saying that.
Well, no, because so that's the fascinating point, that whether or not, because Chappelle put in the work, and if you know by his last 3 or 4 specials, at one point he was just sitting on a stool, kind of like
Whining.
venting.
Yeah.
It wasn't like comedy in the traditional Dave Chappelle sense. It was very much of like, hey, poor me. I go out here, make some jokes, and now everybody's upset and trying to hold me accountable. And,
And who
what
wants that at a comedy show?
a
If it's
lot
a
of
meet
people
and
did.
greet, which anything having to do with Chappelle is going to be, I can't believe I'm in the same place. He's one of the greatest of all time. Period. There's no way to argue against that. But if Judah Freelander did that same thing, do you think anybody would be like, "Wow, what a great Netflix special"? No, he couldn't get away with it, as it were.
But
And I'm not
Chappelle,
saying that Dave didn't say some real stuff. Like there was some truth to his venting, but many people question, is this the time and the place to be doing this? Period.
and I think he got away. I don't want to say got away, but I think the audience was more receptive to him doing that because he has been doing this for, like we said, how long, So
Long time.
he's such an artist that even him venting, I'll never forget one of my buddies, Craig Gass, who's a stand-up comic who was roommates with Mitch Hedberg and started his comedy like real early with
Yep.
all these greats. And when he would talk about Chappelle, this was 15 years ago, so before all the controversy, he would say, sometimes Chappelle, when he would get on stage at an open mic, it wasn't even that he was working out material. It wasn't that he was doing a set that he, was going to film. He was just entertaining and interesting. He could tell you a story about before getting on stage, stopping at a store, and it always had this fascinating perspective that sometimes humorous, but always that magic. It was always like a unicorn telling you a story where you're like,
Hmm.
damn, I could have lived that same scenario and never would have seen it the way he saw it, you
Yeah.
know? So he can kind of, in the later years, if you're a Chappelle fan, you know how controversial he's gotten. This Matt Cat, this Matt Cat, this Matt Cat is doing that. And I think whether or not you don't know if he's serious, the best way to uh not engage, but not perpetuate the giganticness of what he's becoming right now is to kind of leave him alone. I think this material falls dead somebody else doing it, like we established. I don't think this material is going to elevate him. I think what is elevating right now is what we're doing, talking about him, what this lady did, a whole article making him almost taboo, and what he's talking about something so, or his comedy, something so repulsive that it should be, stopped at all costs. And I know she didn't say that. I'm just, that was the energy she was giving.
I
And
would
I,
say repulsive as a fan of comedy, that it's not funny. That's my line.
yeah,
I'm not, and if I would not say he is expressly promoting violence against women. I understand what this writer is saying, but continue because I want to talk
well,
about that in a minute.
and the fascinating thing to me was when I was reading this article, I went, this is not like, this is not a Trump rally. This is not a
No,
political ideology. This is not, anything besides a guy getting paid a ton of money and a lot of exposure, like way too much exposure, to try and be funny. Like
kind of, yeah,
what's gonna get me a laugh? And obviously he didn't work too hard because this is like bottom of the barrel, real easy. One newscast I watched that talked about, they played this clip and they came
mhm,
back and it was this black lady and this older white dude, and the white dude went into like, oh, he shouldn't be doing that. And the black lady looks at him like, isn't that from the 70s? This is lazy. And I was
yeah,
like, perfect way to handle it.
yeah,
End the newscast. But when you give it all that attention that old white dude was doing, like, oh, we shouldn't be saying this in this day and age in 2023, which I felt was this article. Same thing with I think her name's Soroya Roberts. When Chappelle's I don't want to say the special. One of the specials came out. Was it the bird theory? Was
the
that the
bird
first one?
conspiracy.
The bird, was that the first one he brought back to Netflix? Whatever his first one was. I,
Okay,
you know, I think a lot of people were excited, and this lady wrote a whole article. She's a feminist activist, that realm. I don't want to title her, but she's in that sphere, just trying to take Dave Chappelle down a peg. Like, he can't be doing this. This is 2023. Look at what he's doing. And she had, you know, a good amount of people believing what she believed too. But these are not people getting on TV, on the news, going, here's what we believe. This is how things should be. Where there are people doing that right now. There
yeah,
are rights being taken away for women and their bodies that is happening in real time with people who are serious. These are
yeah,
unserious, or I don't want to say unserious people. These are people who are trying to tell jokes to make money. And the worst thing you could do, the absolute worst, is what this broad did. Make him taboo, make him something that is naughty, not supposed to like. Because do you know how many people? Let me just make the point right now. It's just like this dude that's been trolling me on YouTube, right? This guy wrote 3 fucking comments on one of my videos. And I didn't even write this because I didn't want to, but on 2 of the comments I wrote, and he was saying lame jokes like, hey, you ever hear the one about the guy who was unfunny? It's you. That's literally one of his comments. And they were 3 others or 2 others like that. So under them, I said, thank you so much for watching and your engagement in the comments. This really helps me with the algorithm. I appreciate your support. And I wasn't lying. He wrote more
Yeah,
comments than anybody else. And in fact, somebody just 2 days ago commented, if you hate this guy so much, why have you written 3 comments? And how many times have you watched it? And I thought it was hilarious because that was my take. I was like, whether you hate me or you love me, so long as you're watching, hopefully more than once, and subscribing
sure.
because you hate me so much, I'm good with it. That's my point on this. Matt Rife don't care. You watched some of his special with Netflix just turned the dial and went one more.
Yep.
This lady wrote it, and do you know everybody that wants to hate him is going to go have to check him out? And you know how many fans he might convert from that? And just the exposure he gets from the Independent, this woman who I don't know, I don't know how many other articles she writes, but people are going to know her name.
Well, she writes a lot, and I want to say to your point about that, I think because this woman wrote this article, and she's not the only one, like you said, I think many other people have
It's
written about it, not
yeah,
just women, but he's going to lose people who were at that concert who was like, you know what? I never really thought about it like that. So I'm glad somebody's saying something about him. But this stuff generally works itself out. I don't think this guy is going to be huge unless he changes whatever recipe he thinks he's doing. The math is not working in his favor, but maybe I just don't understand it. It is okay to say that our generation doesn't get the humor that some people are taking from this. I think
but
some
do you
some comedy is universal and some is definitely better than others, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he's definitely going to go away, if that makes sense.
well, the universal comedy, right? There are joke books. Like my daughter would always ask for joke books. She wanted to learn jokes, and they were kid joke books, but they were just the knock knocks, the funny quick one line, the quick punchline jokes.
Yeah.
And Jackie the Joke Man Martlin, you know
Hmm.
him, right?
Of course.
Howard
Yeah.
Howard Stern show for a long time. He was essentially a walking joke book,
Yeah.
but always on the very dirty end of things, the
Sure.
very unpolitically correct. But that guy, I mean, his stand-up was just punchline after punchline after punchline because he essentially was a walking joke book. Those jokes, if someone just came out and did all his material, because I don't even think a lot of his material was original. I think like he
No.
was
Oh my
right.
gosh. No.
Yeah, everything he
hundreds
did was just
hundreds of jokes that have been done 1,000 times, and his kind of digging was just to find jokes that, hey, maybe you haven't heard this one, but a
yeah.
lot of old borscht belt jokes, a lot of guy goes to heaven jokes, a lot of guy goes to doctor jokes, tons of stuff. Yeah.
And that's what I mean. I don't want to say it reminded me again. I don't want to make these comparisons. I have to though. But this kid felt very much. Well, I don't because I don't want to give him that much credit. Because Jackie had a
Okay.
style, cadence. Not saying he doesn't. He has a very.
Okay.
The weird thing is like he has a very Baltimore twang to him. So it was
Totally.
weird that he was talking about Baltimore like he'd just been there. I was like, aren't you from
Yeah.
Baltimore?
Baltimore. He
Baltimore,
said
water,
Baltimore.
water.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Anyway.
so this dude is kind of like a walking joke book. It's very cliche. It's very expected.
This kid?
Yeah, his
No. Oh God, no, no.
he is the TikTok version of like textbook like set up punch. And I'm not saying they're good. Jackie had clever stuff that you wondered I mean, that's the whole thing with comedy. You wonder where they're going. If you can expect it, it's usually not the best comedy. The best comedy is unexpected. It's a point of view you never thought about, like I was saying with Chappelle, a normal scenario with a crazy fucking twist
And that
or
is the
take.
entire recipe. We've talked about 20 different things about comedy, rule of threes, a million others. Don't let them see you sweat, all that. Here is the recipe for any joke, period. You set up something, you set it up, and the audience hears one thing. But the punchline's coming, and it is going to sweep the rug from under you because your expectation was not met, and you were delivered with something that you didn't even, You thought you were going one direction, boom, we go this way. That's a joke. In its
But
simplest form, that is a joke. When you see it coming, you are violating that recipe. When you have something unoriginal, you are violating that recipe. When you set it up to where you are telling the punchline in the setup, unless you're, gosh, give me somebody really good. Unless you're Richard Pryor, that is not going to be a joke that lands. Unless you're Eddie Murphy, that's not a joke that's going to land, period. So this kid did a lot of that, setting up the punchline in the setup, and not only does it fall flat, but it's combative and lazy. And what this reporter had a problem with was the overall narrative. I think she lasered in on the first 10 minutes more than anything of his entire special, which I couldn't even get through. But I think she focused on that for what a reason that she finds pertinent and important, which I agree. If you are putting a narrative that women are dumb, women are lazy, women are ugly, women have no experience, women don't know what to do unless men tell them to do it, men or women need to receive a reminder every now and then that they're women, and that narrative keeps getting pushed out. I applaud this woman for writing what she wrote. I think it was a little myopic. That's kind of her job, though, as somebody who
don't
is
you
a
think? Do you not
advocate for violence against women. Period. I think she
But
did her job. I didn't find the rest of her article good.
but again, she's critiquing comedy. Do you not believe that her doing that article and being like, you can't, it's so hard for me to see someone taking something so not serious very serious. It's like scolding someone for joking
What
and they
wasn't
keep joking.
serious? What wasn't serious?
This kid, this kid is telling jokes. He's literally not being serious. That's the whole thing of comedians. Like, you're
It
never
is,
seeing a
but
comedian
as we
going, that's their autobiography. I believe everything they said true to
well,
life.
that's why I was saying the stuff about Dave Chappelle. If
Yeah.
certain things are tongue in cheek, or Bill Burr, if certain things are tongue in cheek and everybody's in on the joke, and I don't mean just in the crowd at the live taping or whatever, you can't find more offensive people than a Daniel Tosh or a Jesselnick or whatever. But it's known to everybody before, during, and after. This is unserious. If this kid, even in this woman's perspective, let me back up. If this special caused not just this woman, but many women to say, I don't freaking like that. That was kind of gross. And it's unoriginal. Why say this joke if it's not built up to be a great joke? That's my point.
Don't you
That's
think
my
she
point, period.
validated him, though?
How?
I feel like her and this critique, she poses it as he's a real threat. He's on Dave Chappelle's level of like a following, um, a, a presence, an influencer. I feel like this article, like the newscast, when the lady was like, "Isn't that from the '70s?" and kind of like shrugged it off almost. It was so beautiful because I went, "That's what you do with this." You go, "Oh, great, we heard that back in the '70s. Thanks for nothing. Probably not going to watch it." And I guarantee you, viewers were probably more receptive to like, "Oh shit, that's weak comedy. I don't want to watch that," as opposed to this very well thought out article validating like this man could be a threat and his thoughts that maybe are jokes, but they're thoughts too, could be poisoning the youth. Like the whole taking this serious is too much for me. And I feel like what she did was validate him, not only as a comedian, but as someone who has massive influence. And I don't believe he does. I don't believe he does on the level
How
of
can you?
Netflix gave him.
You're coming from a lot of different directions. What I am hearing you say, let me agree with one point. I agree that she validated him as a comic, but there wasn't a whole lot of validation to do. He has an hour special on Netflix. Netflix validated him, okay? So that's one. Two, if she wants to point out anything about his comedy, let's say she doesn't know crap about comedy. Let's assume she
I don't think
knows
she
very
does.
little about comedy.
She does. She knows very little.
Saying that he has a huge following is objectively true. It's supported by evidence. He has millions of followers on TikTok. He has a long history, I don't care if it's 2 years or 5 years, of people watching him saying he is funny. So, where does the danger lie? From her perspective, the danger lies that somebody with a platform who is being pushed out into the world as someone to be validated, saying that he's saying some pretty gross stuff, her calling him out doesn't validate him. Netflix validates him. His followers validate him. If other people want to call him out and criticize him, good. I don't care who criticizes him. From my perspective, I hope more people criticize him for his not good comedy, his not good jokes, and maybe call him out for being a pretty boy, as it were, because there are many pretty boys who are really good at comedy as well. There are pretty people who are good at comedy. He's not one of them, period.
Pretty people can do comedy, and you
Bo
can too.
Burnham, attractive young man when he started at 15 or something. Super
13.
talented. Dimitri
Is he
Martin,
though?
not really a great looking kid. Many people
Is he
would say.
though?
Who? Bo Burnham?
Yeah, I'm just going with you.
I think you are joking with me. Yeah, super talented.
Hey, what was your first point again that you were making about the validation thing? Because I
Netflix.
was listening to you and I forgot to make a mental note when you said point number
Netflix
one.
validated him.
Oh, that's right. We said this earlier. In fact, you said this. Netflix will validate anybody if they think it's a cash cow.
Yeah, if they
So,
think it's a cash cow, but they're not
and
going to
that's
give
what,
that to anybody. They're not going to give it to somebody who has no followers.
yo,
They're not
that
picking
is,
people off the street and going
they
into
are.
comedy clubs.
They literally did. No, I'm not kidding. There is I don't know if it's still on here. I will find it, and the next time we do this, I will bring it to you. It was basically no name comics, and they did, I forget, it was broken up into 5 comics for the first episode and 5 for the second, and just giving them like carte blanche of like these weird sketches. And it was literally people with not a following, very low on the total. I think they were trying to boost them up to see if they could get something from it. So my point to that Netflix will validate anyone is, how many times did she mention Netflix in this?
0.
Here's where I'm going with this. She's validating this kid like he's the one going out here paying himself to tell these lazy jokes. I think if you're going to critique comedy, you got to be just as fucking clever. And in this point, you don't have to be that clever, but you need to be more clever. And again, she's validating this kid, and to validate my point, which we're getting super meta, is you and I are talking about him. Other people are talking about him. People are, this article got pushed out to me through, I think, Apple News. You know what I mean? Like, this is getting pushed out because obviously it picked up some virality. This kid has an internet presence, not doubting any of that. But it's giving so much more exposure. And especially when the exposure is a lightning rod, people, if it's a car accident, if she's saying this is a car crash and you shouldn't watch this, it's going to attract so much more. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Netflix was like, oh, boost that article she wrote about how you got
Of
to hate these
course.
guys. You
Of
know that. That's
course.
the traditional. That was the whole Alice Cooper thing. If you ever read Supermensch about their manager, he was like, we're going to mail out their records with women's panties in it and make it so controversial that parents
Yeah.
are going to hate it. If parents hate it, the kids will love it. So essentially, she she critiqued him wrong. That's what I'm getting at. Go after
I don't.
Netflix. Go
No.
after.
I'm not going to say that because there's only so much you can put into one article. And giving her credit, she has a lot in there. She does talk about Chris D'Elia. She does talk about Russell Brand. I mean, nobody likes it when they come after their guy, but she goes after Bill Burr. she is bringing up the narrative, the overarching point. Many young, especially white male comics,
Duh.
go after um, something that feels familiar to men who might be a little aggressive with women, or if you want
Who
to
might
go
have
the
how the French say, la privilege.
well, I mean, she even talks about Andrew Tate, who is still a thing apparently, no matter what this dude does. And
Yeah.
Milo Yiannopoulos is another one where I'm like, this guy's still around? Are you kidding
Yo,
me?
do you know who Andrew Tate just sat down with? Which I couldn't believe it.
Yes,
The dude from Valuetainment. I forget his
yes,
name.
I know. I saw it.
Huge YouTuber. And I went, wow, that I think deserves an article from her. Andrew Tate is not a comedian. Andrew Tate is very serious about how he wants to S on people, especially of the other gender. You know, that is so worthy of it. But to parallel him or to bring up Tate's name in an article about comedy, and I get where she's going with that overarching thing, but that's the whole thing that's been on everyone's radar. It's almost funny because Bill Burr, I believe, talks about.
What?
Oh no, are we glitching?
You are.
Oh,
You are.
have you ever heard about Bill Burr?
I'm going to wrap it up, Rob. I have to wrap it up. I apologize, but
All right, then listen. Shit. What was? Oh man, I didn't get to talk about. I just need to say this. This broad claims to be a dating coach. No, we have to
Yes.
talk about it because I don't know if you were around, but back in the aughts, the early 2000s, people were doing this thing called life coach. There was no
I know what aughts are.
Yeah, there was no certificate. You just could be a life coach. We even interviewed one on our radio show at the time. And this girl was about 20, probably 21, because I think she could drink. And she was a life coach. And it wasn't real, but people paid her to coach their life. Like, I'm assuming.
Do you know why? Because she had expansive, long, sophisticated, worldly time and experience with life, thereby giving her the credence, the
one of the best
credentials.
Yes. One of the best interviews we ever had, hearing a 21-year-old talk about what she life coaches. I don't remember all of it, but I'm sure it was like have a filing cabinet and eat food in the morning. This dating coach thing, and her whole podcast is called Millennial Love. She talks to people, and like the one I was listening to, she was like dating in your 30s, which I was like, are you 39? How do you know about dating in your 30s if you're really not there yet? It's all faux.
But we're not talking about that. We're talking about this woman. You're saying this woman's a life coach? Wrap it up.
This is why we need to understand the woman that's critiquing comedy and a very okay to critique aspect of comedy. She's doing it in the wrong way. Instead of calling him lazy and superficial, riding on his looks and bad joke and no joke writing.
No, I said that. I don't think she ever said that. I don't think she said he has bad joke writing. She just said these are not things to be laughed at.
That's my point. If she instead of what she said, if she had said this, he's riding on his looks and not being able to really write. This woman who is a dating coach, if you're not 35 and well, here we go. Would you take dating advice from someone who's single?
Yeah.
Why? You would?
Many reasons. Yeah. What are you talking about?
I would.
You can't put a blanket statement like that.
I'm sorry, but people that are like, I'm a dating coach, and you're like, oh, you're single? How would you know? Like, I would want a dating coach to be someone who maybe got married at 38 and
thrice divorced. I hear you. I know what you're saying. I get it.
So she has no credibility critiquing, and that's where reading her accolades was, sorry, it's hard
That
to
was
get that out.
easy.
She had so many of them. You almost start to wonder, like, were these awards her parents bought for her? Because this is bad journalism.
I'm going to give you my last thought, and then I really do have to go. Here's my final thought. My final thought is, if comedy is good enough, it can be critiqued by anyone and everyone for any reason. And if it stands up to scrutiny, that's how you know it's good comedy. Period.
And my point is if you want to critique comedy, okay, but you want to do it in a serious, we need to change the world way, critique what brought that comedy there. Don't critique the actual comedy.
Yeah, I hear you.
Critique the fan base, critique the corporate sponsors of it, critique everything that incubates that to exist, because this is where she fucking swung and missed. That instead of, and this is the activist in me, because I would have fully supported this chick, but I went, you're just as bad as Matt Rife. You're the Matt Rife of journalism. You are one basic bitch, just like Matt Rife is a basic bitch. If you had said the structures that have allowed him to succeed are what is wrong with this, and instead of going like, oh, you can tie it along here and look at all the comics that came up, and I go, broad, do you not see it? This is structurally how society has been set up. What do you think Netflix, I follow Netflix CEO, who I think he's out now, but he's some white dude in his 40s that says bullshit, cat on the wall, hang in there, whatever they are, feel goodisms, and he gets 1 million fucking likes on his LinkedIn page, and I'm the only one, I'm surprised I'm not banned yet, being like, bro, how much do you pay your people? Like critiquing like the actual structure of his working of his business. That's how she needs to. Olivia Petter.
I hear you, Rob. I hear you. I hear you.
No, you
I
don't.
hear you. No, I do. But this is where I'll critique you. And then, as God is my witness, I'm shutting this. I'm pushing it off.
You can't.
Watch me. Fucking watch me, dude. Okay, anyway, this is what I will say. When there is a...
It would be funny if, because you couldn't shut it off, you had to stay. Like, you're not obviously in a box, but if that's the dystopian future we're heading to, you're like, please let me out of the virtual space. No. Welcome to working in capitalist America in 2050. Your boss has to punch you out of the virtual workroom. All right, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
This is my last. So I said that was my last point. This is my last point.
This is your real
and it's not going to be funny. At the next, because inevitably there'll be another mass shooting. At the mass shooting, 90% of the news is not going to talk about the structure, Rob. They're going to talk about the person who had the gun and what kind of gun it was. And what we're talking about with Matt Rife, what this woman was talking about with Matt Rife, is that he has a microphone shooting out to a mass destruction, in my opinion, but he is the perpetrator. So there is.
But isn't that what's wrong? Because I got to cap that
with the news cycle. Yeah, maybe it is, but that's where we are.
Oh wait, we can't agree on, like, that's what's wrong. It's just like I watched whatever the last one was. I watched this lady on the news. She said this doesn't happen here, and I said, how many times do you have to see that on the news to not realize, like, no, it's in America. It happens everywhere.
Absolutely.
So I think you're making my point. Like, you're right. Everyone's focused on the wrong shit. You know why? Because they make money that way. If you fix it, this white broad who's 28 or 29, who's award-winning award-winning journalist, can't capitalize on her podcast and her stuff on this other bad dude. If they look at the system, these white people, and they realize that it's structurally set up for these white people to win, and I'm not even kidding, like, that might sound sarcastic. This is where I lose people.
I know what you're saying. I'm saying that you're talking about solving a problem, a huge problem.
But don't you agree?
These people are writing it, are not going to write article after article and newscast after newscast about the myriad of things we can, should, will do to fix these gigantic issues. You're not
Solutions there are no profits to solutions. It's the same thing with when they say, like, if there ever was a cure for cancer, you take out the legs of so many of the medical industry that can capitalize off illness, off sickness. And I mean, it's a
right,
sad
Rob.
truth.
How are
But
we
don't
going to
you
talk? How are we going to talk about solutions if there are fundamental things that prevent these things from being fixed? You're not going to fix misogyny. This woman's not going to fix it. She can speak out to it, though, and bravo to her and her readers for supporting her with the idea that violence against women is bad, period. And that's her goal, is to put that out there.
but it's
And
superficial. What she's doing, and that's what I'm saying, just like the
what is
news,
she what is she supposed to do, though, Rob?
everything I just said.
Have
If
a
she
solution. She's
it
supposed to have a solution to violence against women.
Yeah, well, not a solution, but here my point was in her article. She's like, "Don't you see the recurring theme with all these comics that?" So I go, "These comics can only go so far on their own. At some
Absolutely,
point,
I hear your point. Yeah, their
so
fans are
so
just as bad
just
sometimes, and Netflix is not great for supporting ideas like that.
so
They knew
just
what
like the
his
news, I need you
stand-up
to
set was.
don't you agree with me on the news? I need you to agree with this. That if the news, and again, I know they're not in, like, this is a hypothetical world because realistically, if it bleeds, it leads. Everyone knows that saying.
Yeah,
This is for-profit news. It's not to educate and inform, like my great mentor Noam Chomsky said. A good in public is informed and makes rational decisions. An ill
uninformed public.
and an uninformed public that makes irrational decisions is ripe for capitalism. But that's why the news is not going to, talk about what bills are being passed, or we could even, you could bring this with any of the abortion rights. I'm not saying that they're going to say this is the solution, but they're not even taking a crack at saying, like, why do you think there's an overarching theme? I was like, it's right in front of you, Olivia. You're saying there's an overarching theme. Don't you think there's something bigger at play here? I wanted to be like, Jesus, lady, you're showing your age. Act accordingly. Like, get a mentor, get a dating coach, Olivia. Maybe they'll help you figure this out. I just feel like she
I
tiptoed
agree
around
that
it.
news. I agree that news and journalism should cover
By the way,
some
we
of.
got 5 viewers right now. That's fucking nuts.
Yeah,
That's
and it's. I was gonna get off 10 minutes ago. So anyway,
I've
um,
locked you in. You were in the virtual workspace, and this is 2050 dystopian America, and you can knock it out.
I appreciate the article.
That's
I
some black man
appreciate
shit.
anybody trying to take a crack at comedy. I hope good comedy goes forward, and I hope bad comedy gets swept away. I hope journalism, since you're talking about it, I hope journalism gets better. We'll see if that happens. I don't have the solutions, I don't have the answers, and neither do they. But when people think they have solutions, maybe it's the arrogance that makes it less palatable, that makes it less um, profitable to say, you know what, we at 111 News, we know what's going on and we have the solutions. Tune in. Nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to hear some hard culture.
Nobody's tried
There are
that.
laws. There are
Nobody's tried
laws
that.
being. There are laws being passed in the South that's like, hey, books. We're getting rid of them. Do you know why?
They're
Because
bad for
I
your
don't
health.
want my kid asking me questions about biology or ecology or finances
Or
or
history.
English or history or evolution or anything else. I don't want my kids asking me those questions, so knock that shit off. Actually, legislation in Alabama and Mississippi and Florida and Texas and way too many places, they want to get rid of books because they can't stand hearing what is a solution. You can't start talking about solutions if you don't know what the problem is. And the only way I can make sure that people don't know what the problem is if I get rid of the fucking books and I don't talk about history and I don't bring this shit up. So you got me fired up at the last second, Rob. But
I'm good at that. They call it an agitator. I'm an agitator.
Great.
And I found out what my political belief is. It's cynicism.
Go on. It is cynicism. I agree with you.
No, but that's a real thing. Look it up. It's not cynical. It's sin. SYN. Look it up. That's your homework for next week. And I just want to finish with saying I disagree with him. Olivia, you shouldn't have. Just leave it alone. You don't like it? It's comedy. Leave it alone. This guy's going to disappear real quick. Mark my words. We're not going to be in 2020, 2030. We're not going to be going, oh, it's another classic Matt Rife bit. Okay?
Yeah.
Hey, make sure you subscribe to what's my channel? Boston Rob. If you're watching, please subscribe. And Ample Thought, I think he's over there. But he could be. I don't know. He's locked in this room. I got to virtually click him out. It's like a Black Mirror episode. Black Mirror, don't take this. No,
I have to pee.
All right. So make sure you subscribe. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week, whatever day this is next week around this time. Thanks.
Yeah. See you guys.
Later.